Hi. Okay. Now, hi everyone, it's Kino here. Welcome to day 2 of the yoga challenge. This month is the yoga drills challenge, and we're focusing here on YouTube on the pose tutorials. So I'm going to break down the essence of the postures of each day of the challenge. Today's yoga challenge pose is Paschimottanasana, a deep forward fold that's really the foundation of the whole yoga practice. Before I get into the technique of forward bending and how important forward bending is, let's just pause and think about or really frame today's discussion and pose tutorial in the context of what type of posture it is. It's the flexibility posture. This is a forward bend, so we're working on stretching the body, we're working on developing more mobility in the joints, and probably also stretching or expanding the mind. And that's something that happens in all yoga poses. The reason I'm mentioning that is there was a comment on yesterday's video from a viewer named Lyric Lai. Hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And this viewer, thanks for leaving me a question and a comment. If you have a question or a comment, you can leave it in the comment section below, and I might pick one and answer it tomorrow. So hi Lyric, thanks for leaving me the question. So your question was that you seem to go to the gym a lot, or when you go to the gym, I don't know if it was a lot, but when you go to the gym and build muscle, you seem to notice that you lose flexibility. And so your question is, should I stop going to the gym? Do these two things work against each other? And I will tell you the unfortunate answer to that is kind of yes. You know, building bulk in the muscles definitely works against lengthening the muscles for flexibility. However, I'm not telling you not to go to the gym or work on strengthening or bulking up the muscles. Instead, my advice to you is to think about what is the main discipline you want to focus on. So if you love weightlifting and that's your main discipline, then use yoga to find balance to that. If yoga is your main discipline, but you just also like to go to the gym sometimes, then understand that you want to place your emphasis primarily on the yoga methodology. And I think that's really true with anything. If you choose one main methodology, whether it's yoga, running, marathon training, tennis, gym, whatever it is that you like to do, that there's kind of one main physical discipline that dominates how you train your physicality, and everything else is kind of cross-training that complements that main discipline. I find that that's really, really useful, particularly when one of your main methodologies is really intense. And yoga can be really intense and demanding. So yes, it's totally normal for flexibility and strength to kind of work as yin and yang. The idea with the yoga practice is if you practice sort of only yoga, then you'll have the perfect balance between kind of body weight conditioning, which will give you a balance between natural strength and natural flexibility. As you work flexibility in yoga, you also work strength. As you work strength in yoga, you also work flexibility. And it takes, I would say, maybe like 10 years for the body to reach that equilibrium point if you have daily practice. Okay, so that's my answer, and of course we could continue talking about this, but we've got the yoga pose tutorial to look at today. Yoga pose of the day, Paschimottanasana. I already said it, it's forward bending. Forward bending, flexibility, foundational flexibility you could even think about in your yoga practice. A really good forward bend sets you up for success in so many other yoga poses. First, a really good forward bend will give you more ease of entry into inversions and arm balances, which are kind of fun. Then a deep forward fold gets you into the digestive system, and this can improve your digestion, increase your energy, because when your digestion is flowing really well, hey, then you've got more energy in your life. You know, I had a friend of mine who says you're only ever as happy as your bowel movements are. Maybe that's TMI, but I mean, like, think about it personally. If you were backed up for a week, life is pretty miserable. So forward bending can help with that. Now, in all seriousness, forward bending also paves the way for external hip rotation, internal hip rotation, and gives you access to deep spinal twists. What happens when you really start to access your deep forward folds is you also tend to unlock the mysteries of Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha, that activation in the pelvic floor and in the lower abdomen. And when this turns on, you get the corollary health benefit and probably maybe even like life-changing benefit of relieving sometimes chronic and debilitating lower back pain. Of course, yoga is not a panacea, and neither is forward bending a solution for everything, but it is really, really important. Now, the million-dollar question, how do you forward fold? You may look at me and think, wow, you were just born forward folding. You probably just landed out of the womb in a deep forward fold. It's totally not the case. My very first yoga class, I could not touch my toes. It was so difficult for me. My back was really rounded and I just felt a lot of pressure in the lower back and in the neck trying to forward fold. What I learned, number one, good technique helps. And number two, like anything else flexibility related in the body, you cannot force it. You can plant the seed and practice with patience, with faith, but not for rush. If you push your body too hard, particularly with flexibility poses, you can really predispose yourself to injury, which is totally avoidable. As Patanjali's Yoga Sutras say, heyam dukam anagatam. That pain which has not yet arrived, please try to avoid. In other words, please don't injure yourself trying to do a yoga pose. It's just a yoga pose. What are you using the pose for? Nothing to prove. It's not like when you forward bend, they invite you into the realm of the Buddhas or anything like that. When you forward bend, the journey is meant to increase health in the body, open up centers of awareness inside of the brain, and make you happier. And if you end up injuring yourself along the way, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of the whole journey of yoga. But even if you injure yourself along the way, there is healing and a lesson for you in that. I just hope you never have to go there. Okay, let's get started. So first, your forward bend begins in a posture called Dandasana, the seated staff pose. Dandasana is kind of like your neutral point, and this sets up kind of how you'll forward fold. First, let's start with the legs and the feet. You want your feet to be flexed, toes spread relatively wide apart. Bases of the big toes touching or close by, depending on your anatomy and the size and shape of your body. You may or may not be able to touch your feet together. If you're a bigger bodied student or if you're pregnant, you're going to need to open your feet a little bit. But the idea, nevertheless, is to have the legs and the hip joints be in a parallel position. So in your forward fold, regardless of whether your feet are touching or if they're a little apart, what you want to avoid is having the legs soft and the feet splayed out to the side. Unfortunately, the moment you bend forward, the hip joints tend to externally rotate. And this is kind of like a release valve that takes the pressure off the hamstrings. We want to keep the pressure nicely attenuated on the hamstrings. Not so that we're forcing them, but so we're really just like localizing where the epicenter of the movement is. Okay, so we've got the base of the big toes together. The kneecaps are lifted. Depending on the size of your calf muscles, your feet are going to be a little bit off the ground. The heels are going to be a little bit off the ground. Or if your calf muscles are not as thick as mine, maybe your feet are going to be on the ground. Most important thing about the legs in your forward bend is that you don't smush the back of the knees into the ground. Otherwise, you're going to be hyperextending the knee in an unsafe position. Okay? Now, thinking about the pelvis, Dandasana begins the positioning of your pelvis. Many people cannot sit in Dandasana without rounding the back. If this is the case, you want to grab some blankets and put it underneath your sitting bones to help elevate the pelvis. This will give you more of a pivot as you can wiggle from side to side a little bit just to get the flesh of the butt to free the sitting bones, and this will help your pelvis roll to kind of a neutral position, not an extended position, but just like a neutral position where the iliac crests are pointing down and there's a little bit of weight pouring into the center of the sitting bones. Then in Dandasana, not yet in your forward fold, you're going to feel the natural lumbar curve expressed. So you don't need to try to flatten your back yet, but we're thinking about that natural lumbar curve. That natural lumbar curve tends to lift the rib cage and pop up the thoracic spine and widen the shoulders and place your hands on the ground. Now, many people in Dandasana are very concerned about whether or not their hands are on the ground. So some people even come forward just so your hands don't need to be flat. So you can see like only if I really press, then the heels of my hand is on the ground. If you have long arms, lucky you, then you're gonna need to bend your elbows a little bit because you don't wanna do Dandasana with your arms up here, and I can only do that with my fingers on the ground. Then if you cannot touch the ground with your palm, just keep reaching down, it's okay. All right, so this is your Dandasana. From Dandasana, now we can safely forward fold. The epicenter of the forward fold is down inside the pelvis. Here's probably one of the hardest things to really conceptualize in your forward fold is that you have muscles inside your pelvis that can rotate the pelvis. And when the epicenter of the movement happens underneath the iliac crest, inside the hip joint, then you have a really sort of happy pivot in your forward fold. So just try that for a little bit. Think about the torso as a unit, and now see how my back changes I'm in Dandasana. Then if I prepare to forward fold, I'm sucking in the belly, which is flattening the lumbar curve. And then this creates a little bit of hollowness deep in the inside space of the pelvis. Between the navel and the pubic bone, everything's drawing in. And then you can treat the torso as a unit. And then think about pivoting from inside the hip joints, all right? And so there are muscles inside the pelvis that are controlling this movement. This probably looks a little weird right now, but we're looking at building awareness and technique in the body. Now, here's the interesting thing in your forward fold. Your back wants to pivot. If you pivot inside the hip joints, your back can remain straight for a period of time. However, there's this weird kind of technique going around in the yoga world that kind of wants you to hyper engage the back when you forward fold. I'm not a fan of this because it tends to hyper engage your back muscles, sticking out the low belly. And as I showed you in Dandasana, we want to prepare for the transition to the forward bend by drawing the belly in and flattening the muscles of the low back. Forward bends release your back muscles. Okay, so now to enter your forward fold, you're going to pivot forward a little bit. You don't need to go all the way down. Then take the fingertips. There's a really pretty butterfly that's flying over my head right now. I wish you could see it. It's so pretty. Maybe it'll come down. It's a black one with yellow stripes. Sorry for the little distraction. Always good to appreciate the beauty that surrounds you. Fingertips are on the ground, and then the navel goes in so that you begin to lift from underneath to travel the torso forward. See the position of the spine change? I'm no longer up here, but instead I'm facilitating the forward fold from underneath. Now, there are a couple of interesting points. You're gonna feel your back muscles kind of like an oozing, stretching sensation. You're gonna feel that your legs want to soften, and you're gonna resist that, lifting the kneecaps, pressing the base of the big toes together. There's a lot to focus on in your yoga practice, and this is how body awareness becomes kind of awakening. Next, think about the sitting bones, and you're gonna send the sitting bones back to fold a little bit more forward. If you notice, I'm not holding on to my toes, and I didn't enter the forward bend by lifting the arms up. Instead, I'm creating the space, and I advise you to create the space by drawing the belly in, as much in as possible. Okay, so you have two options. You can stay here on your fingertips, or if life feels good, then softening the shoulders, hold on to your big toes. This is danger point number 2, because the human being, as soon as we hold on to our toes, what do? It's time to forward fold. So don't do that. Soften your shoulders. Trust that wherever you get to, that's good enough. Then the navel is in, and you just gently facilitate the forward fold. Now at this point, you want to relax the back muscles. Drop the head down, soften the shoulders, and just be here. Let that be enough. It's good enough. You don't want to force it. Then the gaze is a question in the forward bend. So if you're folded all the way down, you could look at the nose, even close the eyes. If you're about halfway down, I recommend to look at the toes. Some people, when you get very flexible, you can keep the head up and look at the toes. Nose or toes, those are kind of a good gaze. If you're still kind of up here in your forward fold, gaze at the toes. It's the best option. Think about the neck and soften the neck. You come out of your forward bend, straighten the arms, activate the muscles of the lower abdomen, and then pick the torso up. Cross your feet for a moment, and let's just shake that out. So tune into your back muscles, because forward bending, again, relaxes and elongates the back muscles, but you should feel like, wow, the back muscles are actually working. When you tense back, then, meaning like in life or going around engaging in stressful situations, releasing the back in a spinal flexion kind of creates length and space, but you may need to give the back muscles a chance to open. So in other words, if you're feeling it in your back and it's the muscles of the back, it's okay. Just make sure that you don't put pressure on any of the joints of the spine, and that you have the muscles of the low belly drawn in. Now, a second tool that can help you get better into Paschimottanasana is kind of a long hold in a hanging forward fold. So you can start off in a squat. Your squat might not be as deep as mine, but that's okay. You can just, any version of a squat, but you want to keep the feet, again, that parallel hips width apart, and then with the bent knees, cross your forearms over each other, and now the back is fully rested on the thighs. And just notice the position of the back. It's a slightly spinal flexion. So you can drop the head down and stay here. Then you're working on hip flexion, so you're thinking about your thigh bones moving into their sockets, the navel is in, and you want to keep the chest as close to the thighs as possible, and then moving with the pelvis. You're thinking inhale as your hips go back and up. And we'll do that maybe 2 more times. Exhale, squat. Inhale, hips back and up. Exhale, squat. Inhale, hips back and up. And then see if you can lengthen the spine and let gravity help you. Notice again the relaxed spinal flexion that happens in a natural forward fold. Paschimottanasana is related to every other forward fold, so you're going to see the same kind of leg position as Padangusthasana. So if I hold the toes, it's Padangusthasana, but we're not holding, we're just hanging. So your back may be a little bit here. If that's the case, just think about folding, releasing, and you can use that bend in the knee, straighten the leg as many times as you want. And the idea is to just soften, avoid arching the back and holding tension here. Relax the back and let it drop down. Lengthen for a moment, soften. Then let's bend the knees. And let's do Paschimottanasana one more time. See if you can recall that elongating sensation. You could hold straight onto the toes. So you initiate the movement by pivoting inside the pelvis and hold onto the toes. Inhale, prepare. Then lift from underneath, relaxing the back muscles as you forward fold. Watch the legs, kneecaps up, bases of the big toes towards each other, toes spread, soft shoulders, soft neck. Gotta remind myself of that all the time. Inhale, let's straighten the arms, keep the gaze down, the control behind the pubic bone. Inhale, come up, pause for a moment. Then, one last thing. Sometimes I see in yoga class people enter forward bends like this, and then they go down. Now this, unfortunately, if you try that with me, it does create length, yes, but I find that the epicenter of the movement is primarily localized in the back muscles. So it's like back muscles, then your back muscles are engaged, and then, so I'm not a fan of that. If it helps you, I would say do that for a moment, then take the arms down, then return your power center and your concentration inside the pelvis, and then forward fold so you can get that relaxation of the lower back muscles. Okay? All right. Well, understand that even though this technique is there, that it may take many years before your forward bend really opens. So you want to make sure that you are working safely and with good technique. So what are our key points? Number 1, epicenter of your forward bend is inside the hip joints. Number 2, pelvic floor, belly inside. Not the size or shape of the belly, but it's how it activates. Number 3, elongate the spine, but allow a spinal flexion and relax the back muscles. Number 4, don't pull or force your way into it. Surrender to the process. Even if it takes you 10, 20, 30, 40 years, your whole lifetime, you're in yoga for a lifelong practice. Okay, well, I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Remember, if you want to do a full-length practice based on the yoga drills, you can join me on omstars.com, where you get access to 3,000 classes, I think, or maybe even more by now, with me and our team of amazing teachers. And OmStars is my yoga home online. It's my dream, it's my baby, and it's my creation. And I really hope you sign on. There's also a 14-day free trial, so you can try it at no risk. And what else? Tune in tomorrow. Remember also to leave any questions you have, comments, nice comments, friendly comments, positive yoga-related comments in the bottom comment section of this video, and I will be back tomorrow, so tune in. If you want to know when I'm going live, I will post on Instagram, then I'll tell you I'm coming live over here, and then I'll be live, so you can check in for tomorrow's post tutorial of the day for the Yoga Drills Challenge. I share freely as much as I can because I really believe that when you practice yoga, your life changes. Hope you feel a little bit happier, a little bit peaceful, a little bit more joy in your heart, even from just sharing this little bit of time together. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Namaste.